evening to our viewers of the show African Rising, the Diaspora Awakens. You mentioned the imperialist force. There was a huge investment on the governments. So right as you're answering that question, in a few words, are African governments willing to assist the change of the narrative? And if so, do we have groups of people that have lobbied to try and say, for example, West African history between 1800 and 1900, we have a group of scholars who've come together, trying to gather from our oral tradition, from our rock paintings, from archaeological history that we now have. Are governments willing, or do they set aside funding for such programs?
I know there are groups that have, there are people, individuals and groups that have in their own ways tried to draw attention, to the need for it. And one or two, a few African countries, I think, maybe making the effort, but not nearly enough. There are very few of our leaders who, because of the kind of colonial education they were given, have this colonial mentality that inhibits them from even seeing the need to fund, and to actually support, the kind of work you described. I'm a Nigerian, and I know that Nigeria is going through one of the most ridiculous, times of our lives. There's so much insecurity. There is a total disconnection between the politicians who are leaders and the masses. I'm sure you've heard about the NSAS riots, and these are young Nigerians who are not asking for much at all. All they are asking for is for people, armed military men who are paid with taxpayers, who are paid with taxpayers' money to stop killing them, randomly. That's not too much to ask. But the country is in such a mess, because we have politicians who do not actually see themselves as people who are there to serve. They are there to improve their own lot. And these are people who are easily manipulable by the global forces, that continue to benefit from the poor leadership and corruption that African countries are facing. I'll give you an example. As happy as we are that Biden, and Harris are there in America now, and Trump is out, Biden has been vocal. They have been very vocal about their plans for, other parts of the world. What is their policy for Africa going to be? Recently, I was reading that Biden could not even make the time to talk to African leaders like the Nigerian president and Kenyan president, and he had to send, one of his underlings to talk to them. That in itself is an insult. The fact still remains, no matter how big America's economy or China's economy is, they cannot survive without the resources that Africa has. And our leaders, if they know their history, if they know how, ancient rulers allowed themselves to be manipulated by Europeans so that we ended up being colonized and all of that, they should learn to know that there is power at play, even in little subtle things, as who you get to talk to. Why would a president of America who has respect for Africa or who has good plans for Africa not be able to make the time to speak to them. It was not even a physical visit, through a virtual meeting. So these are all parts of, the problems that we need to find ways to address.
Thank you very much. So without funding, because what I like in your approach as you are expurgating, I see that history has got an integral part in terms of us not making the same mistakes that have been made in the past. As you mentioned that some of the things that are happening today, perhaps with multinational companies, are the same things that perhaps happened during the time of colonialism. And
even colonialism in different ways, yes.
Yes. And if we do not shape up our own history and understand where we went wrong, there is no future for us because we have no roots in context, if I'm quoting you well. Is that so, ma'am?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, this globalization that we're all celebrating, if we continue to remain beggar nations, continue to depend on aid, rather than insisting on being more in control of exploiting our own resources, determining the prices of the products of our sweat, we will never get out of the gridlock that we're in.
But how do we?
Once in a while, you get an African leader who comes up and calls a spade, like the Ghanaian president did recently.
Yes.
But we need more leaders, who have that kind of clear vision.
I also see that the Rwandan president, Paul Kagame, also was very firm with the Swiss when
Yes,
it comes
yes.
to beneficiation, to tell them that if you're going to extract, you extract here, but we need to beneficiate before we can sell you, and no more raw materials.
Yes.
And if we do not learn...
As of today, Macron was apologizing to Rwanda. Apology is not enough. But what I'm saying is that when leaders do speak up, these people, they shake them up a bit, they do.
Yes, yes.
And from what I'm even reading, the position the Ghanaian president took is already having, some positive results. So why more African leaders are not doing it is very strange to me. But probably also because enough of us there, the citizens of those countries, are not holding our leaders accountable enough. True. We're not holding them accountable enough to say, look, represent us better when it comes to sitting at table with other leaders.